All right. We'll move on then, and if we'll bring up the presentation. Just want to take some time and go through, we've got actually quite a few slides here, so I'm going to kind of breeze through most of them and maybe spend a little bit of time on probably 4 or 5 slides. But again, this budget that we are getting ready to look at, this proposed budget is it's difficult because it's trying to balance out the fact that you're needing to take and consider growth in the county, but at the same time with very limited funds. So how do you balance that out? And it's not easy. I'll give right up front, give credit to Lisa Pierman, our treasurer, and of course Bonnie Cerisi, who's both of them have worked diligent along with me to try to figure out how to make this work. And then I also want to thank all the departments that came in, presented their department budgets. They did a good job of presenting their bare bones budget with no changes, and which is hard when you know that there's some things that you really need to get in there, and then presenting those needs and then wants, and then we're going through that process of trying to figure out how to make all that work. So it was a long process, and I really didn't finish this up until about 5 o'clock today. So here we go. So we'll go on to the next slide, please. All right, next one. And of course, just a reminder of the mission to maximize all available resources to provide well-planned, adequately resourced, professionally executed public programs, infrastructure, and services to the county citizens. A reminder of what this timeline looks like. This is a typical timeline here. We've obviously today, there was several steps before this, but today we present this proposed budget. We have some time over the next week or so with some finance committee meetings as needed to discuss this proposed budget and make any revisions that we need to make. We'll be ready then by May 13th. We have our public hearings as required, and also the first reading of the budget ordinance. And then on the 14th, immediately after, assuming that passes, that will be sent to our state and local finance office for them to go through it and give their approval. And then we'll have our second reading and adoption of the budget ordinance on June 10th. And then on June 14th, we'll submit to the Kentucky Department of Local Government. All of this has to be done before July 1st. Okay, the judge executive proposes a balanced budget of $60,780,515. So for fiscal year 2025-26. The agenda here, I'll just run through these 5 areas. We'll have a quick overview. We'll look at the revenue by source, expenses by department. We'll have some conclusion and strategy for the county. And then there will be an appendix that I'll just kind of tell you what's in there, and you're welcome to look at it later. Okay, budget overview. So the net operating budget, so this is basically taking revenues and expenses, figuring out which departments bring in revenue and move that up against their expenses and subtract those out. And what this really tells us is this is what the county is operating on. Our revenue at $23,646 and change. And then we've got the expenses, of course, that are up against that. And because they're the same number, I'm saying that this budget is balanced. A couple notes to be able to do that. The revenue had in that, from the annual hospital sale payout, was used to balance the operating budget. It used $2.5 million of the 2.7. So most of that $2.7 million payout is being utilized for this to make this balance in the revenue side. On the expense side, just to kind of give you a snapshot of some of the things that are included in the expenses this year. We have an annual step and grade that is included, have a 1% cost of living adjustment. We have a 1 grade or 5% increase for all the road department hourly people and all the jail hourly people. So all those folks in this budget have a 5% increase, or what we refer to as a grade increase there, 1 grade. 911 or 911, I'm sorry, grade increases, grade changes for 5 other employees. And the total impact of all of those is about a 1.8% personnel expense increase. So it's what I believe is a fairly conservative impact, especially with the number of people that are getting some pretty good increases in their pay. Okay. In this, something that I haven't presented previously, but I wanted to put out there as a kind of a start to do some analysis of the reserves that we have in our budget. And I want to kind of show you some numbers here, and I'll just kind of roll through this. We have right now, well, as of March 31st, we had a total cash at the end of the month of $51+ million. We have restricted funds that we there are specific for different areas and that we cannot touch. And those are a little over 19 million. So you subtract the two, we end up with unrestricted funds of about $32 million. There's also some outstanding encumbrances that are basically March expenses that will be paid in April. So we're taking those out. And so we end up with a little over $30 million. In that, if we take a rainy day reserve, which is we could argue what the right percentage would be, but we'll just go with a 25% of our annual expenditures. And that's just really taking 25% of $615,729. So you multiply that out and it comes in right at $15 million. Okay, so that, if we call that our rainy day reserve, and then we subtract that off, then as of end of March, we end up with about $15.7 million that we can utilize for projects and things that we feel like are needed. So below that, then, if we look at what we currently have with our BOSC pilot payment cash reserve, it's we got paid $8 million. It's gained some interest, $300,000. And so that's what we have right now. We anticipate to have to use, at least we budgeted to need to use about $3 million of that by the end of this fiscal year. So that number will go down. The HMH sale proceeds cash reserve balance right now is right about $7 million. And so if we take those two and add them up, then that's about 15 million, almost covers the whole unrestricted cash balance. All right, move on to the next slide. So if we look at, if you want to call it a rainy day cash reserves, these things would be, this is unrestricted cash reserve, and it's used, typically a 25% calculation, or if you want to say about 3 months worth of county expenses if there was absolutely no revenue that came in. So it's really longer than that. That it would have to be something devastating for us not to receive any revenue for 3 straight months. So it just depends on how bad things got with either really high expenses for some reason or very low revenue that we could stretch this rainy day fund out to make sure that we're providing all the services of the county during that time period. We're looking at a $15 million amount and 100% funded after property taxes are collected. It's not used to balance the budget, and it's reserved for unbudgeted emergencies. And we would also I propose use it for budgeted cash flow after the taxes are collected. So, as of about now, every year, we don't receive any more property tax. So we have a drawdown of our cash to pay for all of our expenses until we get our first payment out of the property tax again in December of each year. So by the end of November, we would anticipate that reserve to go down to about $5 million. And then in December, it would jump back up again. So that's kind of how that would work. Next slide. So we'll move on into county indebtedness. We have in this budget a 7-year lease for some EMS ambulance equipment that would encumber us for about $1 million. It's $140,000 per year at 4% interest. So that is included in this budget. It has, like I said, an annual payment of about $140,000, and then I've got in very small letters down there. You can check it out later if you want to get into detail, or you can talk to Mr. Peterson about any details of what that actually covers for us. But these are items that are getting close to being having some obsolescence there, and be difficult to replace parts and things like that. So we were in need of doing something here, and this is the proposal that we would jump into with to make this work. Next one. Move into some capital investments. Really, the only significant capital investment is in this budget is for $340,000 for EMS, and that is replacement again of EMS equipment that's near obsolescence. We've got in that really $200,000 for one type of item that we really need to get replaced. It's kind of a one-time payout for those things, and then that also includes the $140,000 annual payment that I just talked about. So those two together makes $340,000. Proposed future, looking at if you remember, there was $15.7 million that was available for projects if we desire. And so there's just going down through what we have here right now. We have $7 million in reserve from the HMH sale that's been saved up. This is reserved, I believe, for future public safety capital purchases and projects. This may help address some initial phases of public safety improvements that were identified in the emergency services study on fire and EMS. Is one place that we could apply some of this money. We also have what we at least estimate about $5 million by July in the Blue Oval pilot agreement funds and proposed use of emergency services project, primarily in Glendale. I believe we are in need of a new fire and EMS station and equipment there. Obviously, $5 million will not do all of that, but it would definitely help with some down payment and help us to move forward with some of those projects. That leaves about $3 million or so. Again, nothing in stone here, as none of these are, but these funds could also be used and proposed for savings for a building and equipment maintenance and replacement cost as we try to kind of flesh this out a little bit more in the next months to understand what we really need in the future. We have a large HVAC system here at this particular building that's getting pretty old and will need replaced. And so we need to make sure that we've got money in hand to take care of that. So we can just go down the list of various larger maintenance replacement types of costs that we need to save up for as we go forward. Okay, and then we've got the hospital sale annual payout. I just wanted to spend a moment on that of why I wanted to or felt really a need to include it. First of all, we didn't have enough revenue to cover all the expenses without something. So why use this annual payout revenue to balance the operating budget? Our annual hospital payout is a consistent revenue source, and it will be for the next 20 years. It's $2.7 million per year. Versus we could use the Blue Oval pilot one-time payout, or we could even use general fund reserves that I've just went through to use for projects as a way to cover our operational expenses. So we have three, if you want to call them three different buckets we could pull out of. My opinion is that it makes more sense to pull from the consistent revenue source that will be coming in for the next 20 years. And of course, I'm not saying that we should use all 2.7 million every year for the next 20 years, but we have it available to us as we try to figure out how to continue to grow our services at a very efficient way. But if we, as we try to figure out how to increase revenues to cover all those, right now we have this available to us. And there is precedent here in the history prior to the sale of Hardin Memorial Hospital. Hardin County Fiscal Court did use some of their revenue to subsidize public safety expenses and EMS and jail medical expenses and other expenses. So just a few numbers there to kind of give an idea that this was being utilized in years past to help whenever they could and whenever they felt like they needed to beef up their budget to be able to spend it on a few things. So it's not unheard of to do this type of thing. Okay, next. So some challenges. I think I've mentioned a few of these. I'll hit a few others. The revenue challenges. This budget includes a 4% increase in the property taxes overall for next year. This will bring in approximately $1.1 million extra, and so takes it up to a total of $11.6 million in the budget. We are, again, I've mentioned utilizing a large portion of the annual HMH payout money. We are utilizing solid waste revenue for the general fund at $2.3 million. And we are needing and utilizing a portion of net revenue from the industrial taxing district for road and general funds. So $1.2 million going to the road department. This budget does not utilize any of the remaining Blue Oval pilot agreement, and there should be about $5 million, maybe a little more, I hope, by the end of this fiscal year. Next one. We'll look at appropriation challenges. Again, I just want to emphasize that we are fighting inflation. It's still something that is inherent in what we're trying to do here. All departments' wages and equipment costs are rising. There has been high inflation for the past 4 years, so that is a big impact. Now, the total subsidies, I want to make, this is what's in yellow here, total subsidies budgeted at $12 million. $12 million of subsidies. And I'm looking at what we subsidize the jail. This budget will take us to a $5.8 million subsidy of the jail. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The Sheriff's Department at $3.4 million. The library at $1.2 million, and then the coroner and the attorney both at $800,000 each. So if you add those up, $12 million, and I just want to compare that to how much property tax is projected to come in at 11.6. So it kind of gives you an idea, I believe, of the what we're up against here. All of our property tax is gone. Even in excess of that, even before we get to some of our departments and other things that we are trying to, some of the other services. So that is a big hurdle. It is a huge challenge that we're having to deal with. We do have to contend. Another way to look at it is 29% increase of our jail budget subsidy, up $1.3 million this year. EMS subsidy is at $2.6 million, kind of holding its own there. This includes that $340,000 EMS equipment replacement. The road department holding steady, about 1.2 million subsidy from, and this year it will be from the industrial taxing district revenues to cover road and bridge improvements that are not covered by the state and federal funds and grants. Increases in our insurance costs, as you would expect. Health, property, and workers' comp is across all departments at about $300,000 increase. This takes us up to about a $4.5 million total for insurance in this budget. We also got a 1% COLA in addition to the automatic step and grade increases for all the departments, including the jail and the road and 911. All of that adds up to about $180,000, $179,000 cost to this 1% cost of living adjustment. It includes a lobbyist in Frankfort. This is a new thing. We haven't used a lobbyist in Hardin County that I'm aware of to go to Frankfort and help promote the needs of Hardin County. I want to especially work towards figuring out how we can get some legislation or some help to offset this massive amount of jail subsidy. This would be estimating in what's in the budget of $20,000. This is not a full-time lobbyist, obviously. $20,000 is a part-time, but there are other counties that are kicking in with some collaboration, maybe with some other local organizations that need some help with lobbying, and that's what I'm hopeful that we can do here, is split the cost of a good lobbyist to help us to bring in some more money for us. Also, a new part-time position that I'm proposing is an efficiency and innovation officer. This part-time would be up to $50,000. And the main objectives here would be some general responsibilities driving the improvement of projects in all the departments, but focus on the highest expense areas. This person I would foresee would be working with our jailer, Josh Lindblom, to find new revenue sources and reduce expenses, and also working in conjunction with our lobbyist in Frankfurt on legislation on any monetary relief that we can possibly find. So that's kind of the purpose of having that person. All right, just a few charts I've got thrown in here to kind of give you an idea of what I mentioned, a 4% increase as we have taken that the last 2 years. Even with that, there's been a reduction of the property tax rate. And this past year, it went down 0.2 cents from 11.3 to 11.1. We would anticipate that with the numbers that we have right now to go down to under 11 cents to about 10.8 or something like that. Next one. Just a quick note, I mentioned high inflation the last 4 years. You can see where we've been 4 years ago in 2021 at 4.7%, all the way up to 8%, which is obviously we've all felt that outrageous amount of inflation. And then in 2023 at 4.1, and then about 3% this last year. This chart shows some material costs. One of our big materials is asphalt cost. You can see that it continues to go up. Thankfully, not at some of the rates that we saw back in 2021, 2022, but it's still going up from last year about $86 per ton up to pushing $89 a ton is what we're having to pay this year. This is another chart basically showing the amount of property tax, the history of that, showing that this budget that we're in right now is budgeted about almost $9 million. We should go up and are budgeting $9.5 million of property tax revenue in this next budget. And then the kind of orange line there is the inflation rate. On the right-hand side of the chart shows the rate percentages. So thankfully it's coming down some, but the green line is what Most people that know about inflation rate say is a, what would you say, a healthy rate. 2% is that level. So we're still well above 2% and still having to deal with some inflation. Okay. The only thing I really mention here is that this is a breakout by accounts. It's really more for information showing how that is spread out. The expenses of the $60.7 million. And one note there on the federal and state grants, still showing about $5.5 million, and that's still what's left of our ARPA money that will, by the end of the year, should be depleted to pretty close to zero. Okay, these are department budgets that have revenue. So I just wanted to show that even, for instance, the detention center, our jail has expenses of almost $11 million. Their revenue is about $5.2 million. So that leaves us with that balance of what I was calling $5.8 million deficit there that we're having to subsidize. Emergency medical services. This includes that 7-year lease of $1 million. So that's why it's a deficit of $3.5 million versus $2.5. And you can just kind of look down through there, the road department and our animal care and control at about $1 million. And thankfully, our solid waste disposal landfill is bringing in money. That's why it's black at $2.37 million coming in. If we look at net revenues and net expenses, on the left-hand side are net revenues. So you can see the very top kind of blue area are revenues related to property taxes. And then you move on into some of the local fees and taxes and at the next level down. And then solid waste revenue, already mentioned $2.4 million. Our industrial revenue tax, that is after removing expenses, we have budgeted almost $2 million, which has been very helpful in this budget to have that money to budget with on the revenue side. And then at the very bottom of that, you can see where the HMH funds have come in at $2.5 million to make it balance out at $23.6 million. And on the right-hand side shows all the different departments and how much money is going to each one of those departments. Again, I don't need to go through all of those again, but you can see what those are and can reference those later as needed. So the net operating revenue, just kind of another glance at where most of that is coming from. Taxes and fees obviously is the biggest chunk, 63%, $15 million coming in. We're needing about, like I said, $2.5 million from HMH funds. That's about 11%. And then industrial revenue tax is pulling in about 8% right now. So just another look at the same numbers. Let's look at just a couple of items here on budget overview. I'll try to skip through the ones I've already talked about. I think I've talked about all those, so we'll move to the next slide. We'll just move on to the next slide. These are some of the, on the road side, $2.5 million that we budgeted coming in for state road aid. We have $1.4 million for asphalt concrete roads that we're paying for. No ARPA funds are being used. We've utilized all those that we could. And we have almost $1 million of state supplemental road and bridge funds that we have budgeted to come in from the state. We have A note again that we do supplement our volunteer fire departments at $372,000 worth. Next slide. And we do support our PVA at $250,000 there, $250,000, and $370,000 for the planning and development, and about $400,000 to support engineering services. Hardin County Schools Education and Community TV, yes, $20,000 there, $50,000 for circuit and district drug court, and $50,000 to support Rocket Docket are in here, I think, two obviously very important parts of the budget. Dead stock removal, it's still at $50,000, litter abatement $116,000, and for those that are interested in recycling, we do spend over $200,000 for that program. And just a note of some of the jail breakdown, jail medical contract is $1.6 million. And for jail food and meals, that contract is $900,000. Okay, revenue. Just a note here in the red, one of the reasons that we're having another increase in subsidy for the jail is that the revenue for the jail is showing that it will decrease about $800,000 in this budget. So that's not helping matters at all. And just a note there that the industrial tax, we have seen a nice increase in that, which has been very helpful. Next slide. Property taxes, 19.1%. Just showing some of the percentages there. Next. Expenses, we have our general fund expenses. This just shows a breakdown of what, where those $34 million are going. Next slide. Again, next slide. Okay, and then restricted funds. This just shows where those are coming from, those expenses, where they're going out of that almost $21 million. Okay, next slide. So conclude, again, our goal is still continue to try to stabilize and plan for the future. Safety, emergency areas, I've mentioned the equipment upgrades in EMS. Emergency management, we still are supplying and subsidizing $250,000 to continue to move in a good direction there. Our sheriff's budget, again, is total $3.4 million subsidy. If we look at safety and growth, detention center, obviously we've talked about that. I didn't mention that if we just go back 2 years of what we've had to deal with in our budget, we have had 115% increase. We've come from $2.7 million subsidy all the way up to $5.8 million. So it's a massive increase. Don't know if there's a few other counties that are dealing with this type of issue in their budgeting, but it's a massive problem. So we just have to continue to try to work through it. Next slide. Roads and bridges, 80-20 bridge replacement, subsidy about $310,000. Almost $500,000 state funds paving the Nike Pike and Middle Creek Road. And just a note, again, that we have been mowing 3 times a year. It does cost extra money to do that, but I believe it is a safety issue, and we should continue it. Process improvements. We're going to continue to focus on those improvements and costs of new road and maintenance processes and standards. A lot of work still being done there with our engineering department and our road department. And one note that I want to make is in EMS, a lot of work has gone into trying to figure out how to increase revenues and how to hold down our expenses. But we've seen a 37% increase in the dollar revenue per run that's come to us. So that's pretty impressive, I think, and it amounts to about a $1 million, a little over a $1 million increase from 2022. So that's about a 22% increase. So lots of things funneled into that to make that happen. A lot of work by our EMS director and others that have been a part of that. Next slide. Focus on our people. That's where this 1%, we got a 3% inflation rate. The step and grade doesn't cover 3%, and so the 1% COLA this year will help get close to that 3% for our folks. Communication transparency, will continue to update on the website and any costs associated with that. Infrastructure, we've got a huge amount of dollars, as we were showing in the ARPA money that we will be spending this year for water and sewer projects at our water districts. Improvements, innovation. Again, this is where I'm trying to add 2 part-time positions, a lobbyist and a efficiency innovation officer. Animal care, upgrade some kennel equipment, and then the library, our community, again, we've increased that about $80,000 to support that. Okay, and then in the appendix, there's several charts and other ways to look at some of the data. I included the schedule of payments that are due to us from Baptist Health Hardin. You can see we've got the first 5 years through 2025 completed, and there's another 20 years to go. Just go ahead real quick through there, BK. Personnel, next. Just showing that our salaries have been, the impact of some of these changes took us up about $500,000, if my math is right. Next. Just again showing kind of the breakout of personnel benefits. Next. And showing kind of a history of our personnel expenses over time and how they compare. You can see one interesting thing that was added this year is percent increase per year. And we see from several of these years are 13%, 17%, 12%. So this year, especially with the fact of another year of large increase with jail expenses, that we tried to hold that down as low as possible. And we've also had some positive things that we put in place with reduction of a few positions and such that helped do some of this. But we end up at about 1.8% increase this year. Okay. All right. Is that it? All right. All right. So you can see that, it's difficult whenever you have some of these challenges, but I believe we've come up with a pretty balanced approach. At least I'm hopeful that we can proceed with something at least close to this. Our next steps will be taking this budget and reviewing it, and all the magistrates will have time to review it and look at it, and we'll have some discussions about how to proceed with it over the next week or two. All right. So that covers that. I know it was very exciting stuff. And by the way, it is that presentation is linked out there. So if you weren't able to see it on the screens, I know some of the slides had some pretty small print on them. You're welcome to obviously pull it up and have some more look at it. And feel free to, if you have some questions, to call Bonnie. No, you can call me, and I'll be happy to try to explain anything that wasn't clear.